Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hey, Joe on Joe listeners, it's me, Joe Slepsky, and I'm back and you're back. This is the quarantine re-releases of our original tracks going back 4 years, and I hope you're enjoying these as much as I'm enjoying reliving them, warts and all. I think you can easily hear where I'm finding myself and finding what the show turned out to be, so I'm really happy to share these with you guys. Again, we pulled these back from behind the Patreon wall, and I wanted to make them available to everybody during this time to share and give and listen and have fun, especially because G.I. Joe's back on YouTube now. So, yeah, so I appreciate that. And you guys can always follow me at Joe on Joe Pod on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. Let me know what you think of some of these early episodes, how terrible they are, or how funny they are, or how awful they are. And we're starting recording back up again, so reach out to me. Let me know, joeandjoepod@gmail.com. Let me know if you want to join me for an episode. I believe we're going to jump into G.I. Joe Extreme very, very soon. So without any further ado, here is the OG track from Joe on Joe 4 years ago. Enjoy.
You are listening to the Joe on Joe podcast, the only podcast where Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hi, and welcome back to Joe on Joe. I am your host, Joe Slepsky, and we've got a solo shot this week. No guest, but I'm happy to walk you through the latest episode, which is called Jungle Trap. Do me a favor, if you're on Twitter, follow me at Joe on Joe Pod, Facebook me, Joe on Joe Pod, and even send me an email, joeonjoepod@gmail.com, and let me know if there's something you want to see featured on the show or if you want to be a guest. Most of all, if you're listening to us on iTunes, I would love it if you went into iTunes and gave us a review. All the reviews we can get will help the visibility of the podcast and make sure it spreads to more and more Joe fans. We know you're out there. And so, without further ado, let's get into this week's episode, episode 20, called Jungle Trap. Now, we are recording this just a few days after the tragedies in Orlando. And not to get too into it, but just want to send our you don't want to say thoughts and prayers either, because that's pretty stupid. Just want to send a message out to anyone out there who is, and it's going to sound hypocritical because frankly, it's a G.I. Joe podcast, and you know, it's about military and it's about shooting and guns and all that stuff. But anyone out there that's just feeling marginalized or feeling like you've got no way out and your life's not exactly what you want it to be, violence like that's never the answer. I think if there's one thing we do learn from the Joe Show, it's that violence is typically the last resort. Anyway, so that's my soapbox. I'm going to get off it, and we're going to get into an amazing episode of Joe on Joe, written by Mr. Paul Dini. If you don't know who Paul Dini is, get your head out of your wazoo. Paul Dini is a legend in animation and just the geek world of comic books and everything. He wrote for G.I. Joe. He wrote for Masters of the Universe. He's written on like almost every cartoon since the early mid 80s. He did consultation, or I think he was in the writer's room in the first season of Lost. Most importantly is he did Batman the Animated Series along with Bruce Timm. He's an amazing author. He's an amazing writer. And he actually has a book coming out very soon that I want to say is called A Very Dark Knight or A Dark Knight with an N-I-G-H-T. And it's the first Batman book that's going to be published by Vertigo. Typically, Batman's published by the regular arm of DC. They've never done a Vertigo Batman book. And what it is it's detailing his true life experience of getting attacked when he, in like I want to say mid-90s, by muggers, basically. He got mugged and really broken and really, really in a bad place. And he had to work through it. And I mean, he's a huge success, raging success. And I'm looking forward to the book. Have not read it yet myself, but my understanding of it is it's like the internal debate in his head of Batman and the Joker saying, get up out of that chair and go back into society, get up and be a part of life again, because you can't let these defeats get you down. So I'm excited that Paul Dini wrote this episode, and I think it shines through. It's one of the better, I guess more one of the, not, well, I don't want to say well written, because they're not to detriment any other ones, but it's an interesting tale. It's got a fun, it's got a bunch of ups and downs to it. So we start out in a place like Cairo. It looks somewhere like the Middle East, like Egypt somewhere. Think Raiders of the Lost Ark, when they're running around in the market square. And the Joes are there to rescue a doctor, as typically, doctor scientists they always are. And they get basically ambushed by Cobra. And in disguise is Zartan. He's the main bad in this episode. So the Cobra troops did kidnap the doctor, and they've got him in his custody. And it's Duke, Scarlet, Rakondo, and they get ambushed by his tanks and the Dreadnoks, and out of nowhere, Snake Eyes jumps off the ceiling, and he karate kicks him in the face, and he's kind of saves the day, saves their bacon. Oh, and lest we forget, Rock and Roll is with the guys too. I didn't mention Rock and Roll. He's actually got a fair amount of screen time in this episode, and he's awesome. He's a surfer boy from Los Angeles, and he's just dynamite. So where we're at now is the Joes are taking out his tanks, and the Joes have to go rescue Shakur. Now we can't go any further without mentioning the fact that the doctor's name is Shakur, and absolutely pronounced and probably spelled like Tupac Shakur. So all throughout the episode, they keep saying we have to get Shakur, and I just keep thinking of Tupac. Once again, Tupac didn't die. He's making G.I. Joe cartoons. That's what happened. So the Cobras kidnap Shakur, and they throw him on a water moccasin, which was piloted by Copperhead, and they escape via the water canal. Rakondo says, let's regroup at the APC, which APC is one of the cooler toys. It was the larger vehicle where you could fit all the soldiers and store them. So right now they're sitting inside the APC, which is pretty neat. To get the inside of one of your toys. I don't know why that tickles my fancy. But he basically says there's a location inside the jungle that's really dangerous if you go on foot. So they're going to have to take the dragonflies. So now they've been joined by Dragonfly pilot Wild Bill and Ripcord. And they're heading towards what they believe is the Cobra Temple, which there's Cobra Commander and Mr. Shakur himself.
Who are you? I am the Supreme Commander of Cobra. You may bow if you wish.
I love that they were still using the words like the Supreme Commander names too. Now, also, I want to take this time to say this week I got in the mail a fantastic Kickstarter project that I backed, and it is called The 3D Art of G.I. Joe, and it's 3 volumes of all the original artwork from the Joe toys from 83, 84, 85, etc. And it's, I believe their Twitter tag is at 3D Joes, and the book looks fantastic. It's so enjoyable, and reading through it, I'm seeing all kinds of errors that I've made on this show myself, saying like, oh, this guy wasn't a Joe then, and this guy wasn't a Joe then, and then I'm looking at the toy releases, and of course that character was a Joe, or like Destro was part of the second wave. I always thought Destro was part of the first wave. Cobra Commander wasn't even part of the first wave.
Did you see anything?
I think on one episode, and by the way, my dogs are going a little nuts in the background, so we'll see how that sounds. I think on one episode I said that they never did a Cobra base. Apparently, they did a Sears limited, Sears special. Remember back in the day? I don't know if everyone remembers, like Star Wars toys. Sears did all kinds of deluxe only, Sears only toys. They did a cardboard Cobra base out of Sears. I want to say I remember, but I think that'd be a lie. It looked awesome. Like, it was just so cool. So right now, we're getting a great Dragonfly Fang battle. As the helicopter fight. They're fighting in the sky, and there's a lot of fangs. They keep coming, and the dragonflies were doing well, except they're getting flanked left and right by it. And I don't know how they're going to get out of this, because there's like 8 fangs and only 3 dragonflies. Duke just got hit. Now it's Duke and Roadblock, And in the other helicopter, and the other Dragonfly, is Scarlet and Snake Eyes and Rakondo. And they're also getting flanked by the Fangs. So there's a lot of explosions, and we're going down. So Scarlet's Dragonfly went down. Duke's Dragonfly is going down. And once again, like most Joe cliffhangers, that ends with Gravity being the main threat. Today's File Card Spotlight is on the final Dreadnought of the original 3, Torch. His file name is Tom Winkin. His birthplace is Botany Bay, New South Wales, Australia. Tom Winkin was remanded to Borstal, which is a reform school, at the age of 14. He escaped and he went to sea in the Merchant Marines, where he learned the use of the cutting torch. Tom later rode with the Melbourne Maulers Motorcycle Club after leaving the Merchant Marines. He eventually found his way into the Dreadnoughts a short time thereafter. He took to their lifestyle rather quickly, and he found chaotic kindred spirits in his Dreadnought companions Ripper and Buzzer. The trio were frequently hired as backup muscle by the mercenary Zartan, whom each of them seemed to fear. When Zartan made his way into Cobra, he brought the three of them along with him. Specialty in MO is he works with a oxyacetylene torch as a general cutter, mostly on remodeling stolen cars and occasional safe cracking. And he's been known also to carry a machete. Torch is an illiterate, unrepentant thug whose penchant for sudden and unexpected violence is matched only by the utter depth of his stupidity. He's the one that I would say looks most like a heavy metal band roadie. Black leather vest, kind of a mullet hair with a headband, full beard. Definitely someone you want to stay on the right side of. And that concludes the File Card Spotlights for the 3 original Dreadnoughts. So Tom Winkin, Torch, we salute you.
Now back to G.I. Joe.
I'm telling you, if the G.I. Joes found a way to conquer gravity, they would survive almost every cliffhanger they give. We just had a Cobra soldier, like a Cobra lieutenant guy, kind of have a chatty moment with Cobra Commander. I feel like that would have been a Destro thing, which is a great thing. I credit to Paul Dini, because he obviously wrote that in there. It could have certainly been Destro, but no, let's just give it to a Cobra grunt because it's focused on a grunt. So Zartan shows up with Mr. Shakur, and here we're going to get the plot.
Components you requested, Doctor. My troops are ready to assist you in building the Vulcan machine.
And what's this Vulcan machine supposed to do?
If any country is foolish enough to resist Cobra, the Vulcan machine will unleash a torrent of boiling lava from the Earth's core, reducing its largest city to charred ruins.
Which is really an awesome tool and skill to have if you can get it. So Tupac's device can basically make a volcano on demand, focused anywhere he wants in the world. I should also, I neglected to say earlier when they kidnapped Tupac, I'm just going to call him Tupac. When they kidnapped Tupac, they put on a headband on his forehead that controlled his actions. That's why he says, when he says anything you wish, Cobra Commander, it's because he's being controlled by this headband. Very reminiscent of the headband that they slipped on Duke way back in the first miniseries when Duke was fighting in the pit with all the slave people. So we see that Duke and Rock and Roll have survived their crash, and they just found Scarlet and Snake Eyes and Rakondo. They also survived their crash, their helicopter crash. Rakondo's going to figure out a way to get to the Cobra base. They got a day to get there. If you recall earlier, he said that's not the kind of jungle you want to walk through, and that's what the worry is. So this episode called Jungle Trap, and there we get to the crux of it. So like I said, there's a lot of cool twists and turns here where it starts out with, oh, we got to protect the scientist and we're going to have this fight in the air. Oh, no, the thrust of the show is going to be on the ground in the jungle. That's the name. And that's what we're going to be getting.
If I never see another vine again, it'll be
Cobra Commander's got a lot of cameras and he sees where they're going. So he kind of hits some buttons. So we know that he's got these jungle booby trapped somehow. Oh, and Scarlet.
I'm caught on something.
Is about to hit a trap. Oh, this giant,
are you
like
guys
a
okay?
scythe just flips. Oh, and then Roadblock runs over and he falls into a hole. I think those are called tiger pits. And Snake Eyes jumps over and saves him. Otherwise, he would have fell right on some spikes and skewered his machine gun and butt.
3 guesses who left that little surprise. This whole area is filled with Cobra traps.
And Duke nailed it. And okay, now there's just, that was pretty funny. There's a huge cage that no one noticed, and it's got a live rhino in it. And now the rhino is charging him. But now Rock and Roll is about to play the role of Cleveland Zookeeper and put the rhino down, except Rakondo, because he's the, this is his environment. So it's great that he takes the star. He gets the rhino's attention, and he's standing on the side of the cliff, and the rhino's going to charge at him. And looks like he's going to duck out of the way, and the rhino's going to kind of go over the cliff instead of getting shot in the face, which is what Rock and Roll was going to do. So we see that the rhino hits the water and lives. The water apparently is the rhino's equivalent of the parachute on G.I. Joe. And to his credit, Rock and Roll's really glad he didn't have to shoot the thing. But it makes sense, which is a cool moment for Rakondo. Like that's a nice, it's good, just small, good character stuff. Again, credit to Paul Dini. So we get images of them cutting through the forest, wading through the waters. Snake Eyes scares off the 3 crocodiles who just gave it kind of a nope, 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 and they went the other way. There's a big old snake that was going to get Duke. Scarlet saves him with a bolt from her crossbow. And now here comes Rakondo, and he notices that there's a wide open field. And how does he test it? He throws a mango or something into the field, and sure enough, there's hidden lasers. That's right, folks. Straight up lasers. So now we get to traps that aren't necessarily jungle traps, but like straight up Cobra made some laser traps.
Laser trap has been activated.
Cobra Commander's got an eye in the sky, so he's gonna keep an eye on what's going on. He sees some smoldering ruins, and he assumes that the Joes. And then Zartan pans the camera and says, "No, they're all alive. Well, you're a fool." Zartan's fun in this episode. He's kind of he doesn't have a lot of stakes in it. Like, he's just being hired. And here we go. Cobra Commander unleashes striped hyenas, which makes Zartan very happy about seeing striped hyenas. He's apparently a big fan. I think there was a hyena sidekick. Dusty had a wolf. They gave like one of the iterations that Dusty had a wolf sidekick. I want to say one of the Dreadnoks had a hyena. That's probably totally wrong. And meanwhile, we see that the Doctor, Tupac, his
And they're on our trail.
machine is getting closer and closer to being created.
Stop to blow one away, 3
Cutting
more
back
will tear
to,
you down. We have to
the
lose
hyenas,
them.
and
I'll cover
Roadblock
us.
basically
Let's
tells them,
move
we
it.
got to keep moving. If we stop to fight one of the hyenas, 3 more will tear you down. They're very much like raptors in this regard, like they hunt in packs. So they just got to avoid them entirely. They can't stop to fight them because they'll be in trouble. So they're running, and they're nearing a river. So they're going to swing to the other side of the river, Tarzan style, and Duke gets snared. The hyenas are heading. There's a lot of hyenas too. There's like 6 hyenas. That's a lot. No, there's more than that. That's a lot of hyenas. And Duke's he got snared in a trap, so he's being held upside down, and the hyenas are nipping at his face. We go to the commercial.
G.I. Joe will return after these messages. Now, back to G.I. Joe.
Duke is in a bit of a spot, I will say. His gun is laying on the ground. He dropped his rifle, and he is just ducking these hyenas. But Snake Eyes swings back to the other side, does a complete super somersault flip, gets ordered by Duke to go back. Snake Eyes just kicks this hyena in the face, and now he's karate chopping all of them. And he picks up Duke's rifle, and he starts shooting all the hyenas off. He hands Duke a knife. Duke cuts himself down.
I told you to go back. You deliberately disobeyed an order. But if you don't say anything, I won't either.
That's great. And Snake Eyes gives him the old thumbs up.
Well.
And now here we
It
go.
looks like what
Copperhead
we got
pulls
here
up
is
in
a
his
couple of
water
GI
moccasin.
jungle rats. The only thing a rat's good for is target practice.
Copperhead
Ready? Aim.
is modeled after the sheriff, the warden from Cool Hand Luke. And we got here is a failure to communicate, which is I forget the actor's name, but he was a great actor. It's an amazing role. But that's whoever's doing the Copperhead voice is absolutely channeling failure to communicate. But while they were focused on Snake Eyes and Duke, who were on the one side of the riverbed, Cobra and his Cobra cronies did not realize that Roadblock and Rick Kondo and Scarlet were on the other side, so they ambushed him, and they beat the crap out of him, and they stole all their uniforms. Luckily, there's 5 Joes.
Don't worry, we're just gonna borrow your uniforms.
Cobra moccasin, the water moccasin was overcrowded, so they have 5 uniforms. Although Snake Eyes does not have a Cobra uniform on.
You all won't get away with this.
And they're holding Copperhead
good
hostage.
Snake and get this tub moving.
He's going to drive them into the Cobra base. So this is how they're going to get in. So they look pretty sweet. They're all in
I hope you don't
incognito.
mind pretending to be our prisoner. It'll give us a better chance of sneaking in.
And Snake Eyes giving the old universal A-OK sign.
How much farther, poison
He's playing
breath?
the part of Chewbacca.
You're just aching to
from
get
Star
blown
Wars.
away, ain't you, chump? Well, that's okay, because here we are.
Once again, Cobra found an ancient temple to hide out in. Like, they're just ruining all of the world's great, whatever you want to call them, ancient temples. The Cobra. I mean, if there's an archaeological dig in this world, Cobra will find it and install giant death machines in it. That's what Cobra will do. It seems like there's some kind of crime against history that's happening, even beyond their terroristic demands. So the Joes sneak in. They say they knocked out Copperheads. He's unconscious, so he can't rat him out. And Project Vulcan is complete. That laser looks amazing. Tupac is he's got his headband on. He's totally under control. And Cobra Commander is going to test it on some city. We're going to find out what city is going to do it.
To Cobra. Now, which city shall we use as our test site? Paris, New York, Moscow, Los Angeles.
L.A.? No way some creep's gonna ace my hometown.
That's awesome.
You
so
said it.
You get rock and roll. No one's going to ace my hometown. That's awesome. So the Joes bust in. And it's not possible. Of course it's possible. You saw him heading your way, Cobra Commander. Once again, Scarlet shoots an explosive bow. The Sunlight shows up. Now, Sunlight is, as we know, is a Zartan has like an allergic reaction to it. And I don't think it came up earlier in the episode. So this is one of those like continuity weaknesses. So like you have to know that about them. They didn't prompt you with it earlier in the episode that it would come in handy later, which is cool because it's giving you a little credit. Animation is great as they run across and they're headed towards Cobra Commander.
Control the Vulcan machine. Surrender or the entire United States dies.
Apparently he's going to fire the Vulcan on the
my
entire United
grandmother.
States. And Duke's grandmother wants to surrender, apparently. So they shoot the machine and blow it up, and they're just blasting away at it. And, of course, it's going to explode. I mean, it's probably a fairly sensitive electronic device, and they got a bunch of, heavily armed guns. So I'm pretty sure it's not going to be stable. But like all good machines, it's just going to fire on itself. So the whole temple is going to blow up with lava. So we're getting a volcanic activity flowing through this ancient temple. And it's chasing everybody out, Cobra and Joe alike. The sparkly red lava. Everyone's running to and fro. The Snake Eyes bringing up the rear because, it's what he does. Scarlet running Sans Hell. It's awesome. I want to see. I would love to see figures of all these guys in these Cobra outfits. I'm sure someone did some customs where all they had to do is pop the head off and throw him on a Cobra soldier. But so Zartan jumps out. He jumps on his water skimmer and he's screaming about the sunlight. And he zooms away. And the Joes head right back to Copperhead and the water moccasin where he's just waking up.
Pal, we're in a hurry, and all the dead weight has to go.
All right. So Duke just threw him out of the water moccasin, like where the lava's going to kill him. They could have taken him with them, but they didn't. They threw him out and then they drove away. So as far as we know, Copperhead just died a lava fiery death, which is fantastic. There's no parachutes when it comes to lava. And here we go. The end of the day. Wild Bill and Ripcord show up, and they got Cutter. They're flying the killer whale.
Me mighty worried. Well, first we ditched the rhino that was chasing us, and then Snake Eyes trashed a pack of hyenas. And then after that, huh? I get the feeling this is gonna be one whopper of a story.
Well, Bill, you don't know the half of it.
And they ride off into the sunset. It's a fun episode. Like, it's got a lot of different ups and downs. I really dig it, man. Like, I really dig it. The stakes weren't, they weren't crazy high. There wasn't a huge cast. It was, they got into a spot. They had to get out of it, and they got to the base, and they stopped the Cobra. That's all you want in a Joe episode. So thanks again for listening. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff. Actually did a little bit of Instagram too. And, we really appreciate your listenership. Tell your friends, tell your Joe-loving friends. And now you Joe, and Joeing is half the battle.